boring, you know? I mean, you can go around discovering subcultures everywhere. What's the point, right? I don't know the answer. Because the answer can only come out of an attempt to engage with the context. I don't have a theoretical answer. I think in cultural studies, theory and empirical research go hand in hand. You know, as Stewart puts it, theory is a way to help you get a little further down the road. You need it, but it isn't the end point, and you can't assume at the beginning. So, you know, I think what we need to do is be willing to challenge ourselves. Be willing to say, well, maybe those theories aren't working. And what if, you know, that concept isn't getting at what I need to get at? The work that cultural studies people that we need to do, and one of them is, you know, we need to contextualize notions like media and notions like popular culture. Again, these are notions that were invented in particular contexts. Yeah, it's clear to me, given I know very little about Africa, but it's also clear to me that the way in which the concept of popular culture functions in the northern Atlantic world doesn't work in Africa. You know, we don't have the same set of differences and relations, et cetera, et cetera. So why would you assume that, you know, you could read me on popular culture or Tony Bennett or Stuart Hall and then bring it somewhere else? Right? That it seems to me is the work that cultural studies has to do, and we've gotten lazy. You know, we've gotten comfortable in our academic positions that we produce a dissertation on media or on popular culture, and you know, we cite the relevant people, and we don't actually have to worry that, well, maybe that's not the right way. Right? Maybe it's not telling us anything interesting because, you know, from my perspective, and I speak, you know, mainly in the context of the English-speaking world, you know, I am disappointed by how little we understand the world today. You know, and that can be measured politically in the sense that for 50 years, the United States and most of Europe is moving to the right. We aren't telling the stories that make it possible to move to the left. Right? And, you know, it seems to me when I read, I just don't see the kind of stories that make sense of the world, either empirically or intellectually. And it seems to me that's what cultural studies is supposed to be doing, and if it's not doing it, you know, we have to ask why it's not doing it, and so I think we need to do a lot more work and take a lot more risks. Yes? Easy answer is I have no idea. The second, less easy answer is it depends upon the conjuncture. It depends upon the context. How you approach a context, the theoretical categories and concepts and tools, and the methodological tools you use, it seems to me, depend upon what the context is and what the questions that you're trying to answer. The third and perhaps least easy answer is I don't believe history and structures are entirely displaced. I am neither a post-structuralist nor a postmodernist. I think structures have never been as stable as people now sort of retrospectively claim they were, or claim they were theorized to be, and they're not as unstable as we think, as some people now claim they are. I think history is the ongoing process, or social change is the ongoing process by which structures, that is in my language, articulations, relations are created, broken apart, and recreated. So I think structures are real, but they are always produced and always fluid, have some fluidity, have some contingency, are full of contradictions. So that's what one is looking for, in that sense. Starting with a concept like relationality or articulation is about looking at both the disarticulation. So you have to start obviously by, in a way, trying to break apart the relationships so that you can see how they were constructed, and then so you can see how they could be constructed differently, right? So I've never bought into the notion of kind of the radical displacement of modernity into post-modernity. I think it's a good rule of thumb, at least from the way I practice cultural studies, to say the past was never as blank as you now think it was, and the present is not blank. People were not as, subjectivity was not as unified in the past as you imagine, and it's not as disunified in the present as you imagine. Put in whatever category you want that gets displaced as you put it in these theories. I think it's that process or practice of the making and unmaking of relationships that is the ongoing nature of social reality, and maybe reality. Given the lecture today on the need to talk about nature, yes, and nature too, and reality too, right? The first part of that question, I don't know how to answer. The impact of articulation theory on me, it is how I understand cultural studies. And insofar as I have tried, not everything I've ever written has been cultural studies. I've written a lot of theory, and I've written a lot of papers about cultural studies. But when I do cultural studies work, what I try to do is look at the articulations. Now, what one has to be careful of is a theory of articulation. Right? It's not, articulation is a way of loosening up, if you will, the category of determination. Right? Determination, it seems to me, is a particular understanding or a particular kind of articulation. Right? And different theories of determination, do that. What I think we need to do is to say the work that cultural studies tries to do is look at the different modalities, practices, forms of relationality, of articulation. Do you want to call them all determination? Well, indirect causality, over-determination. There are many, I think, modes of articulation. So articulation isn't a theory in the sense that it is the answer. Articulation is the mode of thinking by which you understand that what you're trying to do is look at the complexity, contingency, contradictions of relationality in their concreteness. It is, as Gramsci put it, thinking with and through the concrete. So, if someone says, well, what about a Marxist theory of determination? I want to say, well, it may